Hello, America. I'm Pastor Corey Brooks. From the south side of Chicago to the nation's capital, this is Rooftop Revelations. Many of you know me as the Rooftop Pastor. I recently spent 343 days living on top of a roof through Chicago's cold and heat to bring awareness to the violence and to raise money for this much needed community center that you see being built behind me. And because of the many donations from Americans just like yourself, we are raising the needed funds for this glorious leadership and economic community center. We aim nothing less than the full transformation of Chicago's most violent block, O Block, into Opportunity Block. Chicago remains the homicide capital of America, 13 years straight. According to Wirepoint's, 573 homicides were committed in Chicago during 2024 at the rate of 21.5 homicides per 100,000 residents. These depressing numbers far exceed those of other major cities like New York City, Houston, and Los Angeles. Yet most of Chicago's city leaders may as well be living on another planet. They refuse to look at the reality in all of its ugliness. After an unruly mob of over 300 kids took over Streetersville and the Loop recently, Mayor Brandon Johnson said the solution was more safe spaces. Safe spaces for who? Anybody who knows Streeterville, home to the Navy Pier, knows that it is one of the safest neighborhoods in all of Chicago. In fact, there were 2 shootings in March. Both were due to large gatherings of teen mobs. That's 2 shootings that could have been prevented had the city taken this problem seriously long before. When Mayor Johnson first took office, there were 3 consecutive nights of street takeovers in the Loop and nearby areas. Fellow Chicagoans and out-of-towners were assaulted. Stores had their windows smashed and were robbed. When we raised our collective outrage back then, Mayor Johnson chastised us for demonizing children. I've never put any of my faith in him. I didn't vote for him and was immensely disappointed when he won. I knew that Chicago would continue on with business as usual. Now I'm seeing more and more Chicagoans wake up to the reality of this mayor. Many of them betrayed their common sense and voted for him out of identity politics. But the reality of the horror shows that this mayor has become too much for them to bear, especially when the children are at stake.
That's Pastor Corey Brooks, raising hell in Chicago, so to speak, raising awareness about what's going on. And he joins me now to talk about his Fox News commentaries that he does frequently. By the way, Pastor Corey Brooks is a visionary leader. He's committed to eradicating violence and transforming lives in Chicago's South Side. He's the founder and the senior pastor of New Beginnings Church of Chicago and the CEO of Project Hood Communities Development Corporation. His academic journey took him through Ball State University, University of Florida, Dallas Theological Seminary, and Grace Theological Seminary. He's been a friend for a while, and I'm so proud to call him a friend, and I'm so delighted to have him on my program with me tonight to talk about what he is doing to transform lives on the South Side. Pastor Brooks, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And thanks for having me on the show.
Well, it's interesting. You did that clip on Fox News not that long ago, and you have related what's going on in Chicago to the effort that you've been making in the South Side, in the violent neighborhoods that you're part of, what you call O Block, really Opportunity Block, because you are transforming that neighborhood. Now, you are somebody who has rejected victimhood mentality. You have rejected diversity training and saying that it hasn't helped anyone. You've also rejected identity politics. In fact, you've spoke about it, you've written about it. But just recently, you took a group of young folks in your community to South Africa. So why was that trip so important, and what were the lessons learned?
Thank you. Well, the trip was important for a whole lot of reasons. One of those reasons is that for far too long, a lot of our young people in our neighborhood have become victims, and they have a victim mindset. And for far too long, they have thought that they can't accomplish certain things and they can't do certain things. And I wanted to take them to see a group of people who don't have a lot of resources, but yet they are not dependent upon government. They're resilient and courageous. And I wanted them to see what it looks like for people who don't have anything, but they're not blaming people and they're not walking around with a victim mentality. They're trying to
take responsibility for their lives, and even in the midst of not having anything, still trying to be producers. And I wanted them to see that, and I wanted them to see what it's like to really have to live in poverty. You know, a lot of these young people, they live in some very difficult situations. A lot of them come from what we call the projects, but poverty is a different level in these third world countries. And so I wanted them to see that. And then, you know, of course, I wanted them to see how faith was being acted out with kids, how kids their age had tremendous faith and tremendous faith in God, and they believed in family, and they were highly disciplined. So there's so many lessons that are important for them to learn from the trip to Zimbabwe, and so many lessons on why we took them.
So, how many children did you take? What ages were they? And what really hit them? What did they say on the way back that they learned?
We took a group of 30 kids in ages from 11 to 17. And one of the best things that I was so glad that they learned was the discipline, how disciplined the kids were in Zimbabwe. You know, we went to several schools, and those schools were packed, and they were like on top of each other. But there was no horse playing, there was no joking, there was no crying. These kids were diligent and disciplined, and they did it with lots of joy. That was a big lesson for our kids to see and to learn.
How about the spirituality of what you saw in Africa compared to what you may see in your own church?
Man, you had a group of people who, especially young kids, who decided that even in the midst of difficulty and hard circumstances and a struggling life, that they still put God first. And they had such great faith. And, you know, like I said, the joy that they had in singing songs to God, in praying, how they treated one another, it was exemplary. And so it was so uniquely different from our community and our kids. And so we needed Zimbabwe and those kids more than they needed us.
So there's a universality, I think, about being a Christian, that you can find similar, maybe even songs, but similar practices around the world. Did they see anything similar? I know that you're a Christian pastor. Did they find familiarity?
One of the amazing things was that they were able to see these young people with such joy, and the similarities that they were able to pick up, like them being able to see themselves, you know, even just the dancing, some of the dance moves and some of the techniques, seeing those kids, seeing that some of those similarities were the same was, you know, really amazing. Singing some of the same songs, just in a different style. But I think most of all, one of the biggest things was them being able to see themselves. The fact that they saw people who could live on their block, people who looked like their grandmother and grandfather. And so that was unique as well. And so it was a unique experience for these young people, and for them to see those type of, to witness and being in that type of environment was a tremendous blessing.
So, how about technology? Was there a little bit of a shock to them? I imagine many of them had
Oh,
cell phones with them. Were
yeah.
and obviously, were they sharing cell phone images and stuff with the children that they interact with themselves? Or am I just overstating that all?
No, no, you know, that's a good point to hit, because I think all of us had a little shock, because I'm used to going out of the country, and no matter where I am, my cell phone has always worked. It carries over to the next place. But in Zimbabwe, their infrastructure is so bad that most of our cell phones were not working until we got to internet. And even when we got to internet, some of the internets were so slow, and it caused us to have so many issues. So to see these young people having to function in another country on a different time zone without their phones, that was a story in and of itself. And I learned something from that, just how dependent our kids have become on technology, and for them not to be able to function. And they were so hectic and so overwhelmed by not being able to have access to their phones. And so that was a whole nother story. I think when we go the next time, we're going to do something along the lines so that these kids know, hey, you're not going to be able to use your phone, so they'll be used to it. But that definitely took some getting used to.
Did any of the children trace their lineage back to Zimbabwe, or do they have
Yeah,
any familiar connections there?
yeah, it's just Africa in general. The fact we didn't get to do like the ancestry.com or the DNA. I really wish we could have, but most blacks in America are not from Zimbabwe or the Zambia area. We're more so from the Ghana and Nigeria area, things like that, Senegal and things like that. And so
Okay.
that's a different coast. But nonetheless, just being able to experience Africa and being able to experience a place that they've never been to, and to see so many different things, because these kids, they hear about Africa and they hear all these stories, and then to get to Africa and see, oh, this is not what I thought it was, it's totally different. It was a really big surprise for a lot of them.
Coming back off the trip, they're flying back, Pastor Brooks. Is there just an immense gratitude to be back in the United States?
Yeah, there's no country better than America. And we are so fortunate to live in such a wonderful country where we can express our faith and where we can live out certain liberties. And, while we were in Zimbabwe on the way out, they were getting ready to have a coup, overthrow the government. And so to be in a country where we don't have to worry about that type of thing is always a big blessing.
Oh my gosh! Wow, that would have been an experience for the children. Did they have any recognition of the political environment in South Africa, which is, there's pockets where it's just absolutely unsafe to go?
Yeah, we had a really good study while there, and they were able to learn about when apartheid, which was in South Africa, and some of those issues that they faced carried over to Zimbabwe, and at that time it was called Rhodesia, and how a lot of the British people were moved out of Zimbabwe and their land was taken and so forth. And they learned the ramifications of that, the good and the bad of that. And now to see where Zimbabwe is compared to where it used to be the breadbasket of Africa, and now their infrastructure is so bad. And so for them to learn the difference and walk through that and talk about it and discuss it was a really good lesson for them to learn.
You're doing amazing work. I think it's really important for these kids to understand how America compares and what and have a sense of gratitude for where they are. I appreciate you going. You did get some pushback though from some people who thought that the trip was not important.
Yeah, there's always a group of people, especially when it comes to things that I do, because I don't shy away from the fact that I'm conservative. I don't shy away from the fact that I hold certain values and viewpoints that oftentimes are contrary to the viewpoints of most of the people who live in our community. And so sometimes we get pushed back, not sometimes, a lot of times we get pushed back for some of the things that we try to do because they're contrary to the way that most people do them. But nonetheless, we push forward, and we are blessed because we have so many people who come alongside us to help us to make sure that it happens. And even in the face of living in a strong liberal community, we're still able to produce some great things. And so we're appreciative of that.
Well, you're doing great work. You're producing a lot. You've got this entire leadership and economic opportunity center going. You've got your own New Beginnings Church. You've got just Project Hood in general and all the services that you provide to folks around there. You've raised a lot of money for this project. You still need to raise a little bit more, I believe, to complete it. But tell my listeners a little bit more about the project, and in the end, what will that community center mean for the people in Englewood?
Absolutely. So it's 90,000 square foot Leadership and Economic Opportunity Center, the Robert R. McCormick Leadership and Economic Opportunity Center. This center is in the center of transformation of our neighborhood. It's the linchpin of what's going to take place about creating opportunities where there have been a lack of opportunities. The center itself is going to house a bank so we can teach financial literacy, an entrepreneurial school so we can start businesses and help entrepreneurs, a health and wellness clinic so we can focus on the health and the wellness, because what good is it for you to have wealth and not have any health? And so that we have a component of that. We have a trade school where we're learning the trades for carpentry to electrical to plumbing and HVAC and roofing, along with automotive. We have a music studio, a theater, where we're really focusing on the arts and teaching kids how to not just be in front of a camera or on the stage, but there's so many other opportunities behind the camera and behind the stage. And so they're going to learn those things as well as editing music. And then we have a swimming pool, which a lot of the kids are really excited about because they don't have access to swimming pools in our neighborhoods. And then, of course, we have 2 basketball gyms, a workout facility, and all the other things that a regular community center would have. And we have a STEM lab and 3 restaurants. It's a big facility. And I would love for people to come down and just check it out on 6620 South King Drive. And if they ever want to come down, just come down to projecthood.org. They can look it up on the website, projecthood.org, and they can see how they can visit us and see all the work that we're doing.
Well, you're an oasis in a desert of a lot of dysfunction in the state of Illinois, a lot of crime, a lot of poverty, and you are that beacon of hope. But it wasn't an easy route. Let's face it, you've made it look easy to others. There's no doubt that around the country, you're probably getting asked, how did you do it? First of all, you're a visionary leader. You had a vision. I think recently you were just at the New York Stock Exchange. So you've got a Fox News regular opinion piece out. This didn't just happen overnight, right? This has been years of you working hard, doing the tough job of building a community, building support, finding a donor base, and actually transforming lives along the way, not waiting for a center, but doing what you can in the interim. How long have you been at it? And what were just give me like a couple of the key points where, you saw a turning point.
Yeah, we've been trying to build this center now for the last 15 years, 14 years. It's been a long time in the making. It's been a lot of hard work. We've faced a lot of trials, a lot of barriers, a lot of difficulty. A lot of Democrats and liberals have hated the fact that we're using conservative principles and values to do a wonderful work in a neighborhood that has been predominantly Democrat for years. And so we've faced a lot of roadblocks and a lot of hatred and a lot of people who have tried to shoot us down. But thankfully, we've been able to push forward with the help of thousands, and I mean thousands of people from across the country and even in Illinois who have come alongside to assist us to make sure that we're doing something that's transformational on this block that desperately needs it. And so the thing that has kept us going is that the love and the compassion that we've gotten from so many people, that even in the face of rejection from sometimes our political figures and leaders, we've still gotten so much love and so much help with resources to build this center that it just motivates you and keeps you going, because you don't want to let those individuals down who believe in your vision, who believe in what you're trying to accomplish, and they want to see things better and they want to have an alternative way to do it. And so the fact that we've been able to do this successfully without depending on the government has been a tremendous blessing. So that keeps us motivated and that keeps us going and keeps us believing that we can accomplish the impossible. Every time I look across the street and I look at that building and see everything that's being done, I'm just tremendously grateful. And then the fact that we had the opportunity to ring the bell. Who would have ever thought that a little organization on the south side of Chicago would be ringing the bell at the New York Stock Exchange? That's major.
That's amazing. You're an amazing person. Again, I am just so appreciative for you coming on and sharing your story and working with those children. And we're 100% behind you, Pastor Brooks. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you. Have a blessed Easter night, the rest of the night. Really appreciate you coming on. He's Pastor Corey Brooks, the visionary leader of Project Hood and the senior pastor of New Beginnings Church. Thanks a lot for joining me on The Real Story.